Welcome viewers to the Thought Leader Show. I'm your host Major Sunil Shetty. You have heard of drones that deliver medicines beyond visual range, self-driving electric vehicles or GPS-enabled trucks. The technology behind all this is known as geospatial technology. It collects and analyzes, stores geography information. There are three parts to geospatial technology that includes geographic information system or the GIS, remote sensing, and global positioning, we all know as GPS. To get a better understanding of geospatial technology, I have a special guest, Nilesh Maurya, who's part of Think Ventures, which invests into early stage startups. And one of these investment is into geospatial startups in India. Welcome, Nilesh. Welcome to the show.
Hi, Sunil. Thank you for having me here.
So let's understand, what is Think Venture all about? What kind of investments do you do?
So Think Ventures is basically a New York-based fund. We write we love to call ourselves the first tech writers for any company that happens. And we usually invest not only in the application layer of companies, the apps which are present, and not beyond something like a platform or a software. We don't do that. We love apps. We love whether they are B2B, B2C, we are open to them. Usually our range is 1 million to 2 million kind of a check, but we do much smaller investments because we feel that's where majority of the innovation works in and around, and we love to explore that space with newer entrepreneurs.
And one of your investments in India is in the geospatial space. Do you want to talk about that?
It's not an Indian company. It's the company is based out of US. It's called RS Traces, which is into geospatial analysis. We have a team of data scientists which sit out of Sri Lanka, just to give us that edge from the talent as well as the cost front. But yes, majority of our operations are in US. I've been looking to develop market here in India, in and around of what's happening in the scene, because we still are a little away from how the technology works here because of the policy, the kind of data that is available. The government policy in and around geospatial is something that is still, I would not say primitive, but still has to catch up with the global data sphere.
There are quite a few controls, isn't it, when it comes to geospatial?
It's a very sensitive topic because a lot of people debate it to be related to privacy. Practically, you can watch anything from the sky up and above. There are a lot of securities issues that takes up place, and so India is a difficult trajectory just because of its diversity. The density of population that we are in. It's not very linear to capture all of that data and get into. Even players like Google haven't released their street view just because of this, because we have our rules of our own. We have the data sensitivity, and climate also plays a lot of important role. We have monsoons, we have a lot of cloudy, although the technology has evolved a lot. But yes, I would put more on the regulation side of things. It's not really easy to get along with how things are right now, and especially with the pixel size that the Indian government currently allows. It's far larger pixels, so you can't draw much of analysis out of it.
The government of India launching its own, equivalent of Google Maps. I think it's called the Gagan project, isn't it? Do you think then the whole sector of geospatial will kind of open up, in a big way in India for Indian startup itself? Why I ask this is, with everything that's happening today, in the drone space, we already seen government of India, liberalize a lot of rules around drone. Use of drones, and also with electric, self-driving electric cars and whatnot. Do you think this is the next, sector or the sunrise sector or industry that Indian startups should be looking for?
So the most promising document that came out this year was the geospatial policy that the government has issued. More than any startup, the regulation built around it, it's very promising what government is saying, not just in terms of supporting startups or getting infrastructure in place. It also speaks about getting talent into position, because if you have looked at these satellite imageries, they are just huge maps. And what do you do with those? Not many of us are accustomed to reading maps like that way. So, it's not just the infrastructure that comes around maps or something that the drone clicks from the top. It's more about, how do you read those information? How do you pull out that information to more meaningful use is something that is more necessary and more important as of now, since it's a sunrise sector. And yes, I mean, in my last, you can say 3-4 years of the startup experience, although my experience is almost over a decade old, but last 3-4 years, I've seen tremendous growth in people, doing location technology, doing geospatial, doing drones. And it's just, I mean, the kind of growth that we have seen is phenomenal. And yes, of course, there are challenges, but yes, the initial, if I call them, the roots are coming out right.
And going forward, what are the other areas or segments or sectors that would use geospatial technology?
So geospatial is something like what data is today. It's going to be used everywhere. We've seen its application being used into restaurant industry. We've seen its application being used in retail industry. People want to know where the footfall is larger. Then now when we speak about the whole pandemic game, bringing logistics into picture, the drone technologies, you have to explain these machines, where do they drop it? I mean, it's not like your normal courier guy that you can explain him, aage se right le lena, kind of a thing. It's more about, feeding these machines with information which is very, very critical, very, very last mile. And globally also, people like, I mean, companies like Walmart have been struggling with the last mile. What do you call the last mile delivery? That's one space where geospatial can just turn things on the table. So yes, and we've seen analysis around real estate building up. Our company, RS Matrices, is specializing into something you call it ESG analysis, which is again a very, very sunrise sector, because suddenly everyone is concerned about climate, everyone is concerned about how things are changing. So, when you look at things from the top, it gives you a very clear picture of how the climate movement has happened, how things have changed over 5 years, 10 years, whether the environment has just grown or whether the environment has just been destroyed by companies for the sake of profit. So yes, now with the investor movement coming in, we've seen ESG as one of the biggest sector playing out, especially with drone technology, logistics and another game. And then you have all the decisions that are coming out of retail space or anything that requires real estate kind of investment. It's very clear from the top what's going to happen. So yeah.
In the geospatial segment, where do you see India fitting in when you talk about when you look at globally?
So India, just because of the startup push from the government and the policy coming in, see, the base, the raw material for this whole geospatial is the satellite imagery that comes out of, whether it comes out of drone, whether it comes out from the satellite on the top. And if you see the growth ISRO has made over last 3-4 years, we have two of the biggest satellite delivery vehicles, which is the PSLV and the GSLV, to launch it. And India has been playing a tremendous role in launching these smaller satellites, which capture image very specific to their need and send it back to the ground. So with India being the hub of the raw material, I'm sure there is a tremendous scope for a startup, and government itself has made, space and satellite as one of its critical areas for investment, even with Startup India, whether it's with DRDO. Everyone is so gung-ho about the whole thing. I feel India, if not in top 5, should be in top 10 in years to come, with the kind of growth that we are seeing and entrepreneurs building knowledge around it.
Also, this sector is capital intensive, isn't it? Just think
Yeah.
of SpaceX; they've been pumping money, millions of dollars into it. India doesn't have that advantage where you could find investors who can put that kind of money.
Yeah.
Local private players or the industries. I'm especially talking about the medium and large scale industries. Can they also play a role in making in either investing or coming up with their own requirements so that this particular sector of geospatial kind of expands and explodes?
For this, I'll just draw a global comparison to what happens is, see, what happened is geospatial has been the game that has come maybe a half a decade or a decade back. Before that, we never heard about it. So a lot of these data and a lot of these imagery was under government control, and government used to use it majorly for defense purposes and things like that. But slowly in past 2-3 years, even internationally, the game has opened up to commercial players. And that's what I see happening in India as well. Maybe in a few years time, when there is a use case driven analysis from the corporates, maybe they want to use it to the core just to match the global standards or meet the customer demand. I see that's when the private investment will start happening into the space, and it will just boost up. I mean, suddenly you'll realize that it's all up within the next 5 years or 10 years. We are surrounded by satellite and drones which are just flying over our head, capturing us every moment. So the data war that we begin, maybe we call it the first 2 decades of this century were towards data and mobile movement. The next 2 decades belong to the spatial technology and geospatial technology. That's what I see, and that's the reason you see a lot of other countries also making investment. UAE recently had their first man in the space. There's Russian investment coming in. China is fighting. India is getting into that race. So it's the next big thing that's going to happen in tech, where decisions are going to be drawn from satellite imagery and nowhere else.
We need another Reliance Geo movement for geospatial as well, I guess.
Maybe you never know. But yes, that's where the core is. The infrastructure is something that India currently lacks. Even with the data that is available right now, we do not have a central repository towards it. It's all in silos. Companies have it in silos. Once that infrastructure, what Geo did actually for telecom or even for other entertainment or e-commerce, is because they laid down that infrastructure. Now that infrastructure is somewhere where I see the government or a triple P kind of a model can play the game. But once that rollout happens, it's going to be, private players are just going to have a party over it.
Your company, what is your internal kind of a thought process when it comes to investing into geospatial technology?
So for us, geospatial has done wonders. We've seen, being in the company, being an advisor, being an investor to the company, you actually get that insider role. And that's the reason I can say with conviction that the next decade is all going to be about spatial technology, because the kind of precision, the kind of decision making data that you get on hand looking at things from the top, it is very, very significant. You won't get any MIS or any that kind of a data which will give you, three things. Spatial imagery gives you three things: auditable data, verifiable data, and untampered data. If you go to someone and if he writes a report and you are not sure whether he's done his things right. But when you look from the sky, you exactly know even an inch and a centimeter of how things have changed around over the years. And that's what gives you the whole story. And that's the reason you say it's going to be one of the most precision driven data that will help you take finest of the finest decision in no time.
My Startup TV is a channel for startups and entrepreneurs. What are your thoughts when you see a channel or when you heard about a channel?
It's a tremendous initiative, and I'm thankful that you have taken it up. India definitely has startups, but everything is so much siloed. Even when we speak about Silicon Valley coming up here in Powai, in Mumbai, or in Bangalore, we definitely need the transfer of information that has to take place. And a channel like my startuptv.in is something which can open up doors at the national level. So people, it's all about collaboration, which will only happen when there's communication. And something which is very focused on startup, which is very close to my heart, if I may say. It's a tremendous initiative that you've come up with. And the more information we can gather in one place, it will help decision making even for startups to have things in place much faster and much quicker. So thank you so much for your initiative, Sunil.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you for joining us, and we hope to see you again on some of our other shows.
Definitely. Looking forward to be with you.